So I actually just came back from watching the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Oh,
Yeah.
How was that?
Did it wash the 1993 one, like the taste of that out of your mouth? Did it wash the taste out?
Whoa. This is assuming that movie was bad. And let me tell you, just because it was made in the 90s and Bowser had frosted tips does not mean that it was a bad movie.
No,
Okay,
it
Bob
was a
Hoskins-
bad movie.
Wow.
Great cast, terrible movie. And there's a plethora of stories behind it. The original script they had gone with for the 93 film was spectacular. It had all these great references to the game, but it also had kind of like almost like a dark, gritty Batman feel to it. But then
see that.
And that's why John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins, or whatever his name is, hopped on, because they saw that script originally. But then just a couple months before that the filming started, there was concern about it being like too dark and too edgy for a video game, like, you know, kid crowd. Huh. So then there was all these like last minute changes, and actually the director, like 3/4 of the way through, was actually kicked off set. So anyways, there's that movie was thrown together very like ramshackle, and so it's just not a great film. It definitely like hits a little bit of nostalgia buttons for me because I was like 7 when it came out, but it is objectively not a good film. So
I was 3 years old and I have never seen it.
Oh, it's worth watching. I used to have little action figures of them too, with their like funky little boots that they had for their jump stuff. So I had the action figures and everything, and I watched it maybe 3 or 4 years ago because I thought, you know, I had the, you know, nostalgia glasses on, and I was like, oh, I remember that film. And so I was going through like a whole like early 90s kick, you know, and I was rewatching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which holds up so well. Same with Ghostbusters, holds up so well. And then I got to that one and I was like, oh God. I should not have watched this. Yeah, I was like, I should have left. And then that's what got me researching the background of it. And I was like, oh, that explains why it's had some issues. So when I ask if it left or if the new one washed the taste out of your mouth of the previous one, it was because I assumed it was bad. But I guess, you know, if you're entitled to love it. So if you love the film, all power to you.
I mean, I love bad movies. Batman and Robin, one of my favorites of all time.
Is that the one where he has nipples?
That's one of them. That's the one with Mr. Freeze's. Right? Yes, yeah. Clooney. We got Schwarzenegger with Mr. Freeze. You Need to Chill.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that film too.
It's camp, and that's what I appreciate about the Super Mario Brothers 1993 camp. But this one, a lot of good references, because I kept pestering my wife all about like, oh, he did that move. That's from this game. Oh, they got this set up. That's from this game. Oh, they referenced Paulina during a news article. Oh, that's from the original. Like, it wasn't Princess Peach. It was Paulina. Like, so there were a lot of good references to keep the non-kids entertained. I was laughing a lot. It's Illumination. Yes, honestly, I saw past Chris Pratt's Italian accent, which is very Italian. And I think that they had a lot of other supporting characters to Mario that were Italian enough that made up for his accent. And there were a couple times where he actually says Mamma Mia in slow motion, and it almost sounds like the original Mario.
What are your thoughts on this real quick, just to interject with regards to the accent? Because like, what are your thoughts on this in 2023? Because essentially, we are saying it's okay to do to Italians what it would not be okay to do with other people. Like, imagine Mario was a Chinese plumber and Chris Pratt was doing some sort of stereotypical Chinese accent.
Well,
I suspect everybody would be up in arms.
There is a difference. Sorry.
Not. I was just going to say maybe not because he's a man. But Scarlett Johansson got that in that one movie that
Ghost in the Shell.
Ghost in the Shell, that one. And they were like, she's white. She should not be playing a Japanese character.
But she wasn't doing a Japanese accent or something.
No,
was
she wasn't.
Right.
But
so that was that
playing a Japanese character. She got so much shit for it.
That's my point, though.
I think Chris Pratt is getting.
Well, but I don't know if that's because it's we're saying it's okay to do it because it's Italians. That's what I'm curious. Because I suspect if Chris Pratt was doing the stereotypical Chinese accent, that there would be some feathers ruffled, right? And so I just find it interesting where we can say like, oh, you can't a white person, like a white man, and I'm for this, by the way. I agree we shouldn't be doing this, sort of thing. But I'm saying I just find it interesting that it's like, okay, this white guy can't do a stereotypical Indian accent, can't do a stereotypical Asian accent, can't do a stereotypical like African American accent, right? Oh, but Italians, fucking go get them.
I think, and this might be more of a nostalgia aspect to reference to, but I think a lot of people were upset because he wasn't trying to emulate how everyone perceives Mario as, which goes with what you're saying about he has a quote-unquote stereotypical Italian accent. So, like, the fact that he wasn't trying to do that, I feel like is what turned people off. Now, in the movie, he's actually from Brooklyn. Whether or not he's doing a Brooklyn accent, I don't know.
Right, okay.
So, but that's the only kind of spoiler that I'll say. I really saw past his, because his voice acting wasn't bad. It's when they specify, like the teaser, the trailer kind of like did it a disservice. It wasn't bad enough to where it was jarring and it pulled me out of the movie. And that's what I'll say. Personally, nothing pulled me out of the like enjoyment of the movie. I enjoyed it the whole way through. Though I have to say, my favorite was Toad, played by Keegan-Michael Key. Doesn't sound anything like Keegan-Michael Key. Very much sounds very similar to the like, I'm Toad. Like very, very like immediate, like nothing but the highest of praise for Keegan-Michael Key. Absolutely fantastic.
Charlie Day Luigi, or who was he?
I think so. If I recall correctly, yes. He was a Luigi. Though if I'm wrong, leave a comment, review, that sort of thing. Tell me that I'm wrong.
I'm glad it's good. I honestly, I don't care about like voices so long as they fit the character and it doesn't take me out of it. And it sounds like that's the case here. Mm-hmm. That being said, I do just find it like from a anthropological perspective or sociological perspective that, if it was a Indian plumber or a Chinese plumber and we had Chris Pratt doing the voice, I'm sure there'd be issues and it would have probably never even been made. And so I just find it interesting that it's okay with the Italian market. And then it's like, are there not like any Italian actors that could have stepped up to do this?
I mean, that is a fair point. A lot of people, I think, were upset that he was cast to do the role instead of the normal Mario voice actor. I can't remember his name, Charles something or other. But yeah, I think that was the main, like, people just like, it's like Star Wars, it's like Star Trek, it's like something we'll get to later on, where people are just like, they got their nostalgia, like, fog. I won't even say glasses. They got the nostalgia fog. And so they think that Mario has to sound like he's always sound for the last 40 years.
Which is so interesting because he only really got that, didn't he, with like Mario 64-ish, right? Because he didn't have like that kind of accent in the TV show with the, what is it, Lou Albino or whatever his name was?
I don't remember who did the cartoon, but yeah.
But it was like the live action portion, like there was a live... Like Captain, it was Captain Lou. Shame.
Oh yeah. No, that was also Bob Hoskins. No, you're right. No, you're right.
No,
it
was
right.
Captain Lou Albano or something like that.
Yeah, something to that effect. Yeah, the wrestler.
And there was like the live action portion. He didn't sound kind of like that stereotypical Italian bit there. Obviously, Bob Hoskins, like he had his own voice there, so it was only like "It's me, Mario," like from I think N64
the games. Yeah. Like when they actually did have voice acting. So like, yeah, you're right. 64, Sunshine, and so on. So with that in mind, I would say that did Chris Pratt play the perfect Mario role? No, but it wasn't enough to completely pull me from it and not enjoy the movie. No, of course not.
And the writing was good and everything was solid.
Oh yeah. There was so many, like, if you are a fan of Easter eggs, you'll be sitting there throughout the whole movie just being like, oh, I see that. Oh, I see that too. Oh, I see that too. Like, there were so many Easter eggs from so many different games, so many different generations. Like, honestly, like, it was good. I wasn't going in there expecting, like, you know, movie of the year or anything crazy like that, or expecting absolute dreck, but like, it was a good movie. It was entertaining. It's an Illumination movie, so they're the ones that do Minions. So like, you're not expecting like, you know, heart-wrenching, you know, gut-tearing things like Pixar or anything crazy like that. But like, in terms of, did it waste my time? No. Did I enjoy sitting there and watching it? Yeah. It was a good popcorn flick.
If this movie is successful, and I think it will be, this is probably a time, interestingly, where Mario owes like some gratitude or a nod of thanks to Sonic.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, because with the exception of Mortal Kombat in the mid-90s, with the exception of Mortal Kombat, I think that every video game, like movie adaptation of a video game, has been like an abysmal failure.
Oh, yeah.
Up until Sonic.
Yes, because even in more modern ones with, because I watched a YouTube video where I remembered that they made an Assassin's Creed movie with Michael Fassbender.
Oh, they did, didn't they?
Yeah, see, it completely was erased from your memory, right? Mm-hmm. They made it, and I think it was, I don't even remember, like 7 years ago or something like that. It was still when Assassin's Creed was pretty high up there in terms of popularity. It went about as well as every other video game to movie adaptation. And I think like, and there might be a couple, maybe like some more esoteric, some more unknown or unique movies that were, you know, popular before Sonic. But yeah, I definitely think that Sonic paved the way for Mario to really shine in his own movie. Yeah,
exactly. I think, like I said, with the exception of Mortal Kombat, which is a bit of a outlier, I think, well, because that movie was successful and was a video game, but it was definitely
I was
weird.
Like, I can't imagine why you're defending Mortal Kombat, because even though it was successful, no one, it's not really well received.
Okay, hold the phone here, because as a fan, as somebody that just said they liked camp, how can you hate on Mortal Kombat?
I didn't. I said it wasn't well received.
Well, but it was successful, which would mean that at the time it was well received. And tell me right now, you can't put that theme song in your head. Mortal Kombat. Dun, 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 dun. You don't have that. You can't have that iconic theme song.
Mortal Kombat when I was a kid, and I also didn't watch the movie.
Oh well, okay. If you didn't watch the movie, that's the theme song wasn't from the.
Yeah,
anybody that did watch the film can instantly recall that theme song. That's a banger right there. That's my jam. And that movie was successful, and that's kind of why I wasn't so much defending it, even though I do enjoy the film, so much as I was pointing to it as the one example out before Sonic of a popular film that was adapted from a video game. Because other than that, Mario Brothers included, of 93 one, everyone had just been a just total failure, and they had never really been able to find a good way to adapt a film to a mainstream audience while like that was based off a video game franchise up until Sonic, which was able to kind of hit that stride. And that's why I was saying that I think Mario owes a bit of a gratitude to it, because you had Sonic did it, and then Pikachu came out, Detective Pikachu, which also nailed it.
Detective Pikachu was after Sonic, yeah,
and kind of followed in that same sort of footstep. And, you know, part of it just has to do with technology advancements, where now we can actually have like video game characters talk to, you know, real people, and it doesn't look like ridiculous. I
mean, I was like, they could have done the Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you know, kept it, you know, 2D cartoon interacting with live action, because absolute banger of a movie. I will say, absolutely love that movie. But yeah, no, you're right, where like they can make them more photorealistic with, you know, referring to the crowd, the mob, if you will, to make sure that Sonic is correct. What was it?
And doesn't have teeth and all that jazz that they had to make him go back. And
oh god, that was
that was nightmare fuel.
It definitely was that first iteration of Sonic.
Part of me wonders though if that was all done intentionally, because, you know, they release this little bits out and then people are horrified by it, right? And you get this entire like call for changing it, and they go back, they spend the money to do it. And I'll admit, I paid a ticket And I don't know if I would have without that initial backlash, but then I was like, oh, they fixed it? Well, fuck, let me go take a look. And then you also feel like you want, even if you were on the fence about seeing it, you almost feel like you have to spend the money because you want to reward the studio for actually listening to the fans. So you don't want the movie to bomb, because all that'll tell them in the future is, well, screw it. Like, the movie's going to fail we're not going to make a bunch of money off this even if we do fix it. So why bother? So I felt like, personally, I was like, well, I got to throw my money in and buy a ticket, because I want them to learn and say, oh, okay, if fans are upset about something and we fix it, they'll show up.
No,
so,
I agree. No, it makes sense. Like, maybe they weren't expecting the vitriol that they received, sure, but like, I definitely feel like there was some sort of tactical like reason behind doing it. They were probably like, let's tease what Sonic looks like, and maybe we'll get some pats on the back and everything, not like
I don't think so. I can't imagine anybody in the graphics department or advertising could have looked at that original design and been like, that's a keeper. Yeah, we nailed it. High five, everybody.
I don't know. I don't presume to assume in that case. Like,
I would
maybe
that is the stuff of nightmares. I can't imagine anybody in the boardroom was like, oh yeah, this is the one. Nailed it.
When you're thinking of boardroom people, those aren't the animators. Those aren't the people that like actually have any sort of like, they don't design. They just say whether or not people get sent to the Shadow Realm because they did something wrong. Right? So like, the animators probably were like, yeah, this looks like ass, but this is what we were told to do, and we don't want to be under heel, so we'll make that. But
I love that in Sonic, was it Sonic 2 or was it Detective Pikachu? It was Chippendales. Have you guys seen like the Rescue Rangers there?
No.
Okay,
I wanted to, because they have the original version of Sonic in there, right?
That's what I was gonna say. So for starters, it's definitely worth checking out. Chippendales Rescue Rangers.
That's what I've heard.
Was actually really good. I very much enjoyed it. So total recommendation there. But there is a really little funny spot in it where they're at like a convention, kind of on point for in terms of fan topics and stuff for this episode. But they're at like a convention, and at one of the booths is like the original design Sonic, and like nobody likes him and is showing up there. But it is such a
sad.
Yeah, but it's such a cool little like Easter egg thing, because you've got like the old like Nightmare version actually there in an actual real movie, and it's like, hey, that design actually got used later, so that was kind of fun.
Well, this is a terrible. I haven't even introduced the podcast.
Oh my goodness, Whoa! You're right. Oh, you are not. You are not Shane.
No, not at any. Well, I mean, I should have introduced us as a podcast before I started talking about Super Mario Brothers movie. But for all the people that don't know who we are, we are the Disinformed podcast. I don't want to do the Beholt thing because I forgot what he says to lead up to it, because I usually just, my eyes glaze over when he's talking and I wait for him to stop so I can say, and I'm Michael. But, this is the Disinformed podcast. I'm Michael.
I'm also Michael.
I'm Jessie.
Yes. we have our one of our great, and I would say co-host, because you've definitely been here enough times, and unlike Shane, our co-host who is not here tonight, I feel like just handing out like the title of host or co-host wherever it seems fit, and not taking it back whenever they say things that I disagree with.
He can't take it back. He can't take it back. See, Shane, he withheld it for a little while. You kept calling me Shane, you're probably listeing to this at some point. So for starters,
he will be.
He's probably already seething with rage by the fact that it took us 17 minutes to get to the introduction. But I will say that, Shane, you can't take it back anymore. It's all mine, baby. It's all mine. So
don't test him.
He was calling me an interloper for a while, and you know what? That was all fair. He was right. I was just sitting in. I was an interloper. I wasn't, part of the official co-host. But then on one glorious, what was it? Like an After Dark, I believe it was, that we went to do.
Yeah, he let it slip. Called you a co-host.
He said, we are the three hosts of the popular podcast Disinformed. And I was like, he said the thing. Did you hear it? Did you hear it? It's on. I'm recording it. I got it. Yeah. I was like, all right. Whisper sweet nothings to me, Shane.
But today we have a returning co-host, bad artist Jessie, joining us today for, continuing the conversation that we've already had. I feel like I'm trying to moderate things a little too much here, but we talked about fandoms in a way, talked about Sonic, talked about Mortal Kombat, apparently, because we have two people that really enjoyed the movie from the 90s on the call. And I wanted to talk about that today.
I like that the one person that's like shit-talking Mortal Kombat admittedly said he didn't watch the movie.
Yeah, I had heard from other people that it wasn't good because, like, leading up to even Sonic, like all the news articles that you would read on this was like, this might be even going back to like Assassin's Creed or like any time there's a new video game movie, there's a boatload of articles that come out saying like, will this be the one good video game to movie adaptation? Will this be the one that takes it to a new level?
If I was like going, oh man, Jean-Claude Van Damme Street Fighter, that was the best film. If I was saying that, I'd be on board with you going, I don't know about this guy.
Well,
Mortal Kombat was an actually good film. But that being said, I actually don't mind what Jean-Claude Van Damme Street Fighter.
But you know why? It's because you enjoy the work. You enjoy the medium that you're engaging with. There's just
something about
fan.
That era. Well, there's just something about that era as well with films that like you just don't get movies that feel like that anymore. Like now, bad films like are bad films, right? And any bad film can look like a high budget film because technology is just like cameras are so good now. Whereas like back then, if you had like put a bunch of money into it like Street Fighter, but it still came out like a really cheesy, campy film, there was just it was almost like its own little piece of art that you're like kind of like Batman and Robin, right? Where you're like, this is not really a good film, but there's so much money poured into it and it's so campy and cheesy that I kind of like it.
I mean, I just like camp because that stuff it entertains me to no end. Like, because you can, in a way, like you can feel the motivation, you can feel the energy in their performances where they might know that it's going to be a bad movie, they might know that it's not going to do well, but they still give it their all. They still try.
JVD always brings it. That man had me the first time I saw him do the splits. I was like, I think I'm switching teams.
Oh, God damn it. Whew. Goodness gracious. I lost my train of thought with that. You shattered it. Gone. Train derailed.
Oh, I would derail that man.
Oh my.
Oh, he derailed that man hard. Oof.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
So with that, I wanted to talk about fandoms today because I feel like we've already started warming up with a lot of talk of, fandoms, but I want to know what your fandoms are, what both of your fandoms are, like fandoms that you've engaged with, because we all are fans of like various forms of media, but whether or not you actually wanted to engage with fans in addition to enjoying the media yourself, right? Like, everyone at some point can say that maybe they liked Harry Potter, but did you engage with the fandom? Did you, or like other things like Mario? Did you ever try and reach out and try, or Pokemon? You might have liked Pokemon, you might have liked the trading card game. Were you part of the tournament? Were you part of a league? And that's what I'm always fascinated about.
All about those Pogs, baby.
Even then, the fandom around Pogs, because even then that is so cool because there's so much interaction by even cross interaction between multiple fandoms, because you get Pogs, like you get someone that loves Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Pogs to death, and you got I almost said Invader Zim, but that's probably maybe a little more towards the end of Pogs. But you got Real Monsters, you got
Invader
Mighty
Zim
Morphin.
just turned 22 years old, by the way. Within the last week or two, hit
What?
its 20. Yeah.
Man,
I thought it was later on. Well, never
I
mind
feel
then.
old.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness gracious! But there were probably Pogs made of it. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which I mean, there already is some crossover between Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers because there's actually a comic series going that has them both interacting. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The main thing that I wanted to bring up was I wanted to ask you guys, like, what sort of fandoms did you really interact with, and what interesting stories do you have from that? Because, like, and I'll give a little bit of backstory. I have written a dissertation in fandoms where I wrote about 3 different types of original media. I wrote about I took the time travel physics in My Little Pony because I was a brony back in the day.
That
I'm
explains
admitting it.
so much.
Yes. The time travel physics in Harry Potter, and then the time travel physics in Back to the Future. And what I did was I analyzed how that works and like trying to do some sort of scientific rigor, like cause and effect, like what happens when you mess around with the timeline, etc. And I compared those time travel physics to original or fan fiction works. So can someone take the time travel? So I searched for fan fiction of like Harry Potter that dealt with time travel and tried to see if they followed the same sort of rules that were set forth in the original work. So with that, I really enjoy how people take original works and adapt it to their own, like use it for their own devices to like tell their own story. Because it's one thing to make up your own stuff as you go along. This is an entirely original work. Everything within there is my own. That's one thing, but it's an entirely other thing to take things that have to take a product that has already been made and to adapt it and make it your own.
It's so interesting that you say that too, because I think that largely the desire to do something to that effect is innately human. To take something that you love and further explore it. As an example, I remember when I was in grade 4, I was a huge fan of the Goosebumps books, right? R.L. Stein's. And one of the Goosebumps, I loved them. And I collected them all. I had all of them right into the Goosebumps Series 2000, started getting all those. And then later on was collecting Fear Street before I kind of fell off of it and stopped collecting. But anyways, one of the Goosebumps books was Egg Monster from Mars. And I remember in grade 4, I wrote a story for class, which was like the Bacon Monster from Venus. Right. And so I'm only a grade 4, right? And I don't, have the concept of like, fandoms or wanting to like, or fan fiction or any of that, right? I don't have like, I don't know that concept yet, but just something like innately human. I love this story. Let me like branch off and do something similar or in that same sort of universe. And I think that, as a little kid, that desire exists. And I think that, really is just innately human, which is probably why there is such a plethora of fan fiction for every single thing. If there's something that you have a remote interest in, there's going to be fan fiction related to it somewhere.
Oh yeah, I agree. And
Isn't that like a law of the internet?
Yes. It isn't necessarily. What was it? Rule
34.
Yeah, 34. Thank you. I can't believe I forgot that. I'll flagellate myself after this call. But yeah, Rule 34. But like, it doesn't necessarily have to be, sexual in nature. Like, if it exists, someone has written fan fiction of it. Someone has shipped 2 people within that work together. Like, I feel like those are variations of the same rule where people will take this original work and they will do something with it. I mean, we could all probably recount times where we watched a really cool movie or we watched something that was like really popular at the time and we were like, you hang out with your friends and you're like, let's play Pokemon, or like, let's pretend to play this or that. And you just make up an entirely new story because you guys just want to be within that universe, and I like that stuff is just so fascinating to me. And I would definitely agree that it is a innate human thing to just want to take something and not necessarily make it your own, but to take something and to like play around with it to like be like, I want to be within this spot or within this work.
To add to it, to make it grow, to push it further forward.
In a way, like that might not necessarily be like, you know, you're a second grader and be like, oh, gee, I would love to, I created 10 more new Pokemon. Like that isn't like necessarily the goal that you work with, but you're like, oh, I want to catch the Pokemon. I want to catch Pikachu. And you know, Pikachu would be better if it had wings and it breathe fire. Like it's a new Pokemon evolution. Like I mean, I did that stuff with Dragon Ball Z when I was a kid. I was a really big Dragon Ball Z fan. Like I had some of the toys. I would hang out with the neighborhood kids and we would invent new Super Saiyan forms, like going all the way up to like Super Saiyan 10 or something crazy like that, you know, because like that's what you just did. Like
now I'm just picturing you and your friends as a kid, like doing crossovers between My Little Pony and Dragon Ball Z.
I did not watch My Little Pony as a kid. I watched the new version that came out in the early 10s.
Oh, I see. You only found My Little Pony as an adult. I see.
Yes,
that makes it much better.
To be specific, I watched My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. I didn't watch the My Little Pony in the 80s. I never watched that show. I watched the Friendship is Magic. I was a brony. And I'll admit that.
I want to read this dissertation.
Oh, yeah, one day I'll try and adapt it into like an actual episode. Like it's I don't know if it's publicly available, but I can send it to you. It's like 50 pages of
I'd be
I can't say
direct,
that'd be
fun.
But yeah.
I'd be game to read it. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, one day I'll make an episode of it. Sure.
All right, so going back to fandoms then. So Jess, do you want to crack open this topic and address his questions there of like what fandom you have history with?
There's a lot of fandoms. Some of them I still consider myself part of, and some of them I don't.
Which is totally fair. I agree. I have a couple of those in that similar boat.
Still a brony at heart. Gotcha.
No.
But I was really big into the Kingdom Hearts fandom. And that was like around the same time when Tumblr was at its peak.
Ooh.
So there was a lot of, you know, Tumblr posts and fan fiction written, and I don't think any of mine lives on the internet, but a friend and I would like pass notebooks back and forth and we would help each other write fan fiction. But I did read a lot of it too. There was Firefly. I do still consider myself a brown coat. So that is one of my favorite shows in existence of all time. I'm sad it is long.
Do you include Serenity as part of that? Is that?
I do. Okay. I enjoyed Serenity.
Who are there people that don't?
Possibly. I'm sure there's someone out there that's like, Serenity is bullshit, worst movie ever. They should have just left it alone.
Oh,
which I'm sure there's somebody out there that feels that way.
That's true. That's true. For every fandom, there is at least one person that has like the most bizarre sort of like view of it.
Well, especially when you have like a bit of a break, you know, in between stuff, because then you give time like where people have settled. Okay, it's not coming back. Here's how in my head the canon continues and what the characters do and what's happened to them. And then when you actually do get to revisit those characters and they haven't gone in the direction that you've headcanon done, then you might have some kickback to it where you might be like, this is bullshit. I'm in my head, the series ended when it ended. So I personally enjoy the film as well, but I'm sure that there are definitely people.
That's actually where I started. I never really watched Firefly, but I watched Serenity. I was like in high school and they had the science club where it was just showing that one day. And so I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll watch it. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I thought it was an okay movie. And
did you circle back to Firefly later?
Actually, no. Just like me now, I was incredibly lazy as a high schooler, and I did not put any effort into trying to find things.
Have either of you seen
it?
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Have either of you seen Cleopatra 2525?
Mm-mm.
Okay,
I feel like that's a Futurama reference when they were like doing the time travel skits, and they had that song where it was like in the year 25, 25, 25. Okay.
So This was like I think it only lasted, I think it made it 2 seasons. I downloaded this stuff like when I went on a huge like downloading and burning DVDs phase in like 2008, 2009. So I was just grabbing everything. And this was I think it was a 2-season series. I remember it ends on like a cliffhanger, unfortunately, but it has, one of the stars of the show is, one of the actresses from Firefly. And, it was made during this, like by the same studios and stuff that were doing like Hercules and Xena, and all those.
Okay.
And it was in that same like action block on that same channel. But it's set in the year 2525. And actually the actress from Firefly, she also sings the theme song to it. It's a very like catchy theme song. It's I highly recommend it anyways, especially for like kind of a unique fandom. If you're into sci-fi at all, it's definitely worth a go. I occasionally revisit it every now and then. So definitely worth like just checking out little snippets and stuff on YouTube just to get your whistle wet regarding it. Cause it is a underrated, in my opinion, sci-fi show that should have continued on. And if you like the Firefly actors and stuff like that, you'll get a kick out of it. And if you are kind of a fan of the Xena Hercules like era, and like the kind of the humor that was injected in that, I think the main concept of it was like, instead of going back in time like we did with Hercules and Xena, let's go like forward and like do a future type show in that same sort of like action-y kick-ass vein.
I did like Xena, but that did remind me that I was also very into Buffy for a while.
Oh, okay.
Huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan. I was into Harry Potter, very much so. You can see my wall. For those of you not on the call, I've got a wall of Harry Potter shit.
Mm-hmm.
Does that still hold true for you?
It does not.
I wonder why.
Yeah. The turn of recent events, but Harry Potter.
The turf of recent events.
Harry Potter was a big part of my life, and because of, at a certain point you cannot separate the art from the artist anymore, and so I enjoy it for what it was to me back then, but I'm not a part of like that fandom anymore, and it's not something that I really hold near and dear to me. I used to read the books once a year. I don't do it anymore.
Wow.
So I sort of agree and sort of don't agree when it comes to the separate the art from the artist. I am a huge proponent of separating the art from the artist, regardless of like whatever, like, atrocities the artist might have done. I can separate the art from that. But there's a big caveat there, is like when the person is no longer like able to benefit from my like contribution. So like if she were to die, then I'd have like zero qualms about like playing the video game, that just came out and doing all that, because she's not like, there's no monetary gain on her end from it now. Right. Same
That's
thing with
fair.
like, yeah, because then she can't benefit from it. Right now, it's like, well, I'm not going to throw my money at it because I don't want to support, because it's just going to your bank account. So like, I'm not going to support that. But if she were to like die tomorrow, I'd be like, oh, cool. All right, let me check out the game.
Yeah, I haven't spent money on Harry Potter in a long time. So
same.
Like,
yeah,
when people ask me what I want, for like birthdays, Christmas, all that, I'm like, please don't buy me Harry Potter stuff. I don't want it.
Yeah.
If you've been friends with me for a while, or my family, that I liked Harry Potter. So I'm just like, no, please don't do that. And I am replacing this wall with my newest fandom and obsession, which is Critical Role. So
okay.
I do have an art print that you can't see that I just got framed on the wall, and I have a couple other ones that need to get framed. But this will eventually be a Critical Role wall. So
nice.
But yeah, that makes sense, because like, regardless of the reason people move away from a fandom, either because the work has completed, or the author is kind of a dick, in one way or 10 other ways. I'm kind of that way with this old webcomic called Homestuck. Unless you're like really deep into like Tumblr lore from like the early 10s, you might not even know what Homestuck was, but it took the scene, if you will, for a couple of years, where people would just show up at cons in gray face paint and wearing like what looked like candy corn on their heads because those were the horns. I can see the kind of like remembering and everything going on with Jessie over there. But yes, I thought I was part of the fandom until I saw how toxic the fandom was. Because I won't get into too much detail, but buckets are a sore subject within that fandom. I won't get into detail. Just know that buckets are a thing, especially spitting in buckets. And there was a video where these 12 people who were all dressed as trolls from the webcomic went to, I think it was like an Olive Garden. They rented a huge table and they sat there and just spat into a bucket and passed it around to each other in public. You don't really need to know the context behind that because it just makes it worse than it actually is. But still, just people spitting into a bucket in public, that's very disgusting. And that's when I really distanced myself from that fandom because I realized that people were taking it way out of control. And that's honestly the last fandom that I associated with. So that's why I wanted to know like your guys's like associations with fandoms, either past or present, because like I've never found a replacement for that fandom because I was the person that was like on any sort of forums that were talking about it. I was the one that, because the webcomic updated sporadically whenever the author decided to add to it, to where like there could be a day where they have like 3 or 4 new panels of a comic or pages, or it could be a week and then there's a flash animation or there's a game or something like that. I even bought into the what is it called? It was a funding thing, Kickstarter. I even bought the Kickstarter that happened, I think, in 2012, that I still haven't gotten my games for completely.
Oh my god!
Because it was supposed to be like, we're going to create a whole new video game, and it was supposed to be 5 acts or 4 acts or something like that, and they published the second act, I think, 2 years ago. So it's one of those things where it's like, you know,
somebody's still showing it some attention though.
Oh yeah, and there have been hours long documentaries on that. One that I do recommend, actually, I think it's like two different ones by a YouTuber by the name of Sarah Z, that was pretty much delved into that fandom. But I don't associate with that fandom anymore because of a lot of the vitriol that happened and a lot of the weird ostracization. Like people were covering themselves in gray paint, not necessarily body paint. And so there was a lot of people just fainting or blacking out or passing out at conventions because they didn't know any better. The characters that they were trying to emulate were completely gray. So they tried doing the like a Wizard of Oz treatment where they coated themselves in gray paint as opposed to the gold paint. And yeah, so just like reminiscing about that just brings up fresh like old memories of just like being disgusted in a way of the fandom that I considered I called myself with. And I started rambling about that, just like bringing up the old memories. But that's I guess the crux of what I wanted today's episode to be, is to just ask you guys, now that we're like getting close to an hour, that's the theme of just like what you guys have dealt with in your fandoms and whether or not you're still part of those fandoms. So like in your case, Jessie, like you were really big into Harry Potter, but you separated yourself from the fandom, not necessarily because of the fandom, but because of the author involved with the fandom. Right?
Yeah, but that you bring up like toxic behavior within a fandom that you were a part of, I think that's something that we probably should circle back around to, because
True.
Fandoms and toxic behavior go together. Like there's not many fandoms that I have heard of or even been a part of that didn't have some toxic corner of it just brewing in the darkness. So
well, that makes sense, because that's the case like with all of society. So it only makes sense that within Well, it's true. I mean, like,
you just
you look
got
at
really
any culture, you're
nihilistic
gonna have,
with it.
it's true. And you look at any culture, you're going to have some subset of assholes. So it only makes sense that it applies to fandom because, you're going to have fans that are part of that, and part of that fandom is going to be part of that subset of assholes.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. But, like, I always like investigating why. Like, because, I mean, you'll see it in the kind of hint at the fandoms that you're involved with, Doc, like the Star Trek fandom. Like, actually, before I continue, do you prefer the term Trekkie or Trekker?
Well, so it's not prefer. The terms themselves are not synonymous. So, like, Trekkie would be more a fan of the original series.
Oh.
Trekker, and these are both antiquated terms now because there's a lot of Star Trek sense. But the terms first kind of came into light when, like, the Next Gen came out. And so Trekkers were, like, Next Gen fans, and Trekkies were original series fans.
That's interesting. I
did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. Yeah, no, exactly. That's why we're having these conversations. But, like, when I had done research for my dissertation, I had come across Trekkie is what people outside of the fandom referred to those within. And this was probably, like, because I had read some old fandom books from, like, the early 90s that talked mainly about Star Trek fandoms and zines that had came about because of it. And then also Twin Peaks. Because both of those fandoms were what really drove the zine revolution in terms of just fandoms. Like, there was other, like, things about zines, which honestly I think I should do an episode on. Just like the underground zine culture would be really, really fascinating to, like, learn about and explain to everyone, because it's so cool, because you have, like, so many different overlaps from, like, the furry community, because I've mentioned that before in the furry episodes that I've done. And then just, like, you also get the things with Star Trek. But to go back to what I was talking about before I rambled too much on, Trekkers is what people refer to themselves as, I guess, back when it was just the original, before they had the Next Generation.
No.
That's
Trekkie.
what I had read. No, that, like, what I had read was, and this could be miscommunication, but what I had read was they had outside people referred to them as Trekkie, but a lot of people within the fandom wanted to call themselves Trekkers, which was interesting.
Yeah, you know what? I interjected with no, but I suppose I can't really speak to that because A, I haven't done the research on it, and B, if you're talking about stuff pre-Next Gen,
yeah, which is fair.
Then it would be pre-Michael. So like,
you mean you weren't alive in the 60s when this thing started? Oh man.
I will quickly say that it amuses me that, we talk about, like, a couple of these things. So, like, for instance, you mentioned Invader Zim earlier, and I have Invader Zim as my phone background.
Nice.
And then, like, so there's Gur there. And in terms of fandoms, like, I had a big Gur costume that I would wear to fan conventions.
Please tell me you have pictures that, yes.
I've got a couple pics.
Good, because I'm going to say pics or it didn't happen.
Yeah,
that's
it was
be good.
It's funny, is that, and I would have easily been able to prove that it happened until like 8 months ago when I moved here. Because when I first started talking to y'all, my Gur costume was still in the closet. Like when I was first posting everything.
Oh!
Yeah, it just got retired because of COVID and stuff. But it was badass. It looked great. It was so well done.
Oh man!
And then, like, my mouse pad and stuff is Invader Zim. And then in terms of Star Trek stuff, obviously I've got a bunch of Star Trek stuff, like tons of that. But it amuses me as well because you talk about, like, Twin Peaks, and, like, right behind me on the bookshelf here, I've got, like, the Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, and I've got, like, the history of Twin Peaks and stuff. So it just amuses me that just in the course of this conversation of fandom, we've, like, touched on several things that I'm like, I either have within arm's reach, or if I took 2 steps behind me, I'd have. So it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, Twin Peaks, a lot of media today that has some sort of mystery element can be traced back to Twin Peaks. Like, if you ask someone that has never heard, like, most people have never heard of Twin Peaks, and I feel like it's so bizarre because of how influential Twin Peaks was to a lot of media that followed it because of how it was structured, how the episodes came about. I don't know much about it myself. I only know about Twin Peaks from my fandom investigations for my dissertation. But it was so influential.
To touch on your topic of like fandoms, so a lot of the things that I've been interested in, because I've been a nerd for a long time, 20 plus years running now, decades, baby. I got decades in the game.
Oh man.
But a lot of my time with things has largely been like independent, or I didn't actively engage with a fandom. For example, like I love Supernatural, right? And I've like watched it tons of times, but I've never like largely interacted with the fan base. I know people that have been on the shows, and we touched on this in the past. But I didn't.
That's probably for the best.
Yeah,
the super Hulakians scare me.
Yeah. And same thing with like
they do. I'm scared of them.
And same thing with like Doctor Who. I haven't like engaged with fandoms that way. Twin Peaks, same thing. It's like I'll listen to podcasts and stuff on it, but I'm not like actively engaging with the fan base. I would say personally, and actually just quickly, like as another callback to previous episodes, and I don't know if this ever actually made it, come to think on it, but call back to pre-roll of previous episodes anyways. I got into Harry Potter when the final book was actually about to come out. And that was because the 30-year-old Australian archaeologist was a huge fan of Harry Potter.
Oh, and my goodness.
And since she was huge into Harry Potter and I was into her, literally, she kind of backdoored me into the Harry Potter fandom.
You know, I feel like sometimes you choose those words. Oh
do
my!
What you gotta do, man.
You do what you gotta do.
But yeah, I remember her being super excited for the final book when it was coming out, and obviously there was like lines around the block on the release day. And I
waited in line at the Borders bookstore till midnight.
Same.
It was a fun time. They had little events and themed drinks, and like everybody was having a good time. Like when the fandom was in its peak, it was fun. Like
I had a good time. I remember all that. So that's how I got into Harry Potter as well. I just thought it was kind of funny because when we were talking about Harry Potter, I was like, oh yeah, Chloe 2 times.
Chloe 2 times.
Goodness gracious. But yeah, like no, because I was also there for a midnight release. I grabbed the book, I grabbed the. Why am I forgetting the 7th? I used to know them off the top of my head. I'm thinking Half-Blood Prince. That's the 6th one.
No, I don't remember either.
What's the 7th?
Deathly Hallows.
Thank you. Deathly Hallows. I was there when it released. I grabbed that book. I told my parents, I'm staying up until I finish that book. I read it throughout the night, and I finished it before I went to school the next day. Nice. I was sleep deprived, but damn it, it was worth it because I had the book completely read and no one else I talked to had. So I got to lord it over other people that I was like, yeah, I sacrificed sleep to read this. Ha ha. And that is where we will end today's episode. Yep, that's right. This is going to be a 2-parter. You can find wherever we are, find our socials. We don't really use them. We use YouTube, though. We usually have an After Dark going on Fridays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. But until next week, I'm Michael.
And I'm Michael.
And I'm Jessie.
And zippity zoop, we're out of here.